We're going to have a real, what, easy conversation today. What is God? No, I'm not kidding. What is God? Tell me, somebody. What do you think? What is God?
Love.
Love.
Law.
Law.
Light.
Light.
Energy.
Oh, energy. Thank you. Okay.
Air around us.
Air around us. I love it. Say it again.
Creator. Creator.
Creator. Okay. I love all of these. I agree with you. I agree with everyone, what everyone said. But now we're going to talk about what the big they think God is. In theistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, God is the creator and the sustainer of the universe. And in deistic religions like Unitarianism and some others, God is the creator but not the sustainer. In pantheistic religions like Hindus and Buddhists and some aspects of unity and some Christian Science folks, God is the universe itself. Sounds kind of familiar. Atheism, of course, is no God. There's no God out there. And agnostics thinks that the existence of God is unknowable. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But I do know what I think God is not. He's not a bearded man in the clouds, bestowing pregnancy on women after a minister says, "By the powers vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife." When I was a kid, I swear to you, that's how I thought it worked. I thought there was some kind of maybe a heart light that opened or something when that minister that said that, and God said, "Okay, time to start making babies." But I remember one day at dinner, I was a little kid, my mom and dad were talking about the neighbor across the street. And she had just found out she was pregnant with her 5th baby. And my mom, in all of her compassionate wisdom, says, "It's not like they don't know how to stop that." And in my mind, I'm going to that, wait a minute, but they're married. I did a double take. What? And I asked her, I said, "Well, how do they stop that? They're married." This couple, they're married. They have 4 other kids. I can't understand how they could know how to stop that. And you know what my mom did? She basically, in the way she explained everything to me, said, just shook her head and made a face. And I didn't get any kind of explanation. But boy, I took the minister's words literally. I always thought as a child, that's really how it worked. A magic light got turned on after that wedding proclamation until I was in 6th grade.
Uh-oh.
And in 6th grade, we had sex ed.
The conversation.
Oh, I found out that you had to have sex to get pregnant. I had thought only the bad girls did that. I gotta be honest, I was pissed. I was pissed. First they ripped Santa and the Easter Bunny away from me. And now God, or at least my image of God. I actually really did lose faith at that moment. I remember it to this day.
You were waiting for the heart light, huh?
I realized there was no white-haired, bearded guy, Santa-like dude that was going to come in and swoop down whenever he was needed. We had to learn a different way to call on him or her. So what does the Bible say that God is? In Exodus it says, 3:14, God said to Moses, "I am who I am." Which to me says everything. He, she, it is everything. And in John 1:5, it says, "This is the message that we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light, I heard somebody say God is light. Yeah. And in Acts 17 it says, indeed God is not far from each and every one of us, for in God we live and move and have our being. Does that resonate? That resonates. And of course, New Thought spirituality, where we are. Why we come together. It generally indicates that God is infinite intelligence. Sometimes we call it divine mind, but we believe that it is everywhere. Spirit is the totality of real things. True human selfhood is divine. And a force for good. And I like, as a scientist, I like that the physics of quantum entanglement, and we've talked about it a lot, it's proven that particles are linked across a distance, like they're connected by a thread. A thread. Or maybe it's a golden light. Or maybe it's a pink light. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it reminds us even science considers us all connected. So actually Monday night, it was interesting, I was watching The Late Show. Does everybody know who Ryan Reynolds is, the really super hot actor? And he was a guest, and he was talking about the moment that he and Paul Rudd's Wrexham soccer team got promoted to, dun dun, the Premier League. I don't know what the Premier League is exactly either, but it was a really, really big deal. And yeah, Ryan and Paul went over to England and had bought a soccer team, or whatever. But at the time they bought this soccer team, Wrexham, it was in the lowest league out of like a 5-level league that they've got over there. And the only reason I understand how big a deal this really is, this promotion to the Premier League, is because of Ted Lasso. Anybody watch Ted Lasso? I kind of get it because of Ted Lasso. And you might know how crazy the Brits and actually much of the rest of the world is about soccer.
Football.
Or football, thank you. The real football, as they would say. But Ryan described the moment that he and the fans spilled out onto the field with ecstatic joy because their Wrexham soccer team had gone from the lowest league, 5 levels down, up to the Premier League. That moment was an ecstatic celebration. You know, there was thousands and thousands and thousands of fans poured out onto this field, and he described the experience as collective effervescence. Turns out that's a French term I'd never heard before. So of course I had to look it up, because I loved the sound of it. Collective effervescence. We can experience collective effervescence as that ecstasy and joy and that feeling of togetherness that we get sometimes at a concert or at a sporting event, unless your Cardinals are losing like 10-0. You know, it's not going to happen every time, right? When they win the World Series, collective effervescence. I went to a Paul McCartney concert once, and people had told me that, oh yeah, the Paul McCartney concert is like a spiritual experience. And I was an okay Beatles fan. I wasn't one of the hardcore people, but my friend Brenda talked me into going. And I thought, okay, I gotta go see him before he croaks. This is probably about 10 years ago. I'm just saying, you know. Oh my, it was a spiritual experience. It truly was one of the most amazing things. Everybody was in so much love, in a place of connection and love. It was amazing. But of course, yes, you can also get it at a church service. Kind of like the sporting event, not every time, but that's what we come together to remind each other of. And every one of those other religions that we talked about earlier, what do they think God is? They also have either some sort of a ceremony. They either sing, or they meditate, or they chant. Think about those kirtans. Boy, those can be an ecstatic, wonderful experience. And think about indigenous peoples from around the world, you know, throughout the ages. You know, they've all had fire ceremonies or something of the sort that brought them that collective effervescence. So I kind of think that's a big part of what God is, us coming together, our experience of God. And it was really interesting. There's Dr. Robert Waldinger is the director of something called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. Has anybody heard of this? This is the longest ongoing study. It's been 85 years. They've been tracking people. There's hundreds, I think there was at least 500 people or something in this study. But they've been tracking them for 85 years, the ones that are still around. And his team announced they were shocked that the biggest predictor of who was going to live long and stay healthy was how connected you were to other people and the warmth of your connection. Right? Connectedness is showing up over and over. But I think those transcendent, connected moments really are our experience of what God is. I recently had a Reiki client who gave me permission to share this story. His dad, when he was growing up, he was physically abusive. So when this young man was 5, his mom left with him, took his sister and and they left the abusive situation. And then she ended up later marrying a man that was a kind and loving father figure that he grew up with. But the biological father, the abusive father, had passed when the young man was 18. And so at 18, you know, we're often not wise enough or mature enough to have dealt with relationships and resolved relationships issues. And so here he was, about 40 years old, still with all this unresolved anger. So we were working on the Ho'oponopono prayer, that prayer for forgiveness and just forgiveness in general. And after we visualized his father as a 5-year-old boy, and what he might have gone through to become that abusive version of a dad, my client had a vision. He saw God as this big pink light. And he saw all of us as extensions, still connected to that pink light. The pink, like sunbeams, but pink sunbeams. We were all pink sunbeams down here in sort of avatar costumes. Anybody see the movie Avatar? Yeah, we're sort of in avatar costumes. And all of a sudden, he and his dad were standing together, his biological dad, were standing together in the big pink light. And they took off their avatar helmets. And they could see each other's true spiritual selves without the scars of Earth's school drama. To be able to look into his dad's eyes and really forgive. He was overwhelmed with joy. So that can also be collective effervescence, communing with the divine and with your past loved ones. I think that's another kind of transcendent moment and experience of what God is. Remembering that we are in the great I am together. So, as we prepare to go to our great I am picnic later, I will just invite you to remember that we are each other's I am. God bless.